If you like what you're seeing and hearing, please consider subscribing to the podcast. You can go to either Apple iTunes, the Google Play Store, Spotify, or Amazon Music in the podcast section. It'll hit Monday morning or Sunday afternoon, depending on when it posts. And the video will hit on YouTube and Spotify Monday. Spotify will hit Monday evening, and YouTube it'll hit Monday morning, 7 a.m., just like it does for the audio services. So please go to those places and consider subscribing or listening to the show. You can also write to me at gwgpodfellows@gmail.com if you want to write me a letter. Let me know what you think of the show, things like that. Or you can also find me on Twitter at JustLittleJoe. So go to those places and please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks. And with that, we'll get on to the episode. Hello, my name is Joseph Carlson. This is episode 225 of Game with Grief. And in this episode, I'm just going to talk about a game called I Am Dead, which kind of blew me away. It kind of surprised me. So we're going to talk about it. I'm going to completely spoil everything, mostly. I don't know if this one was so much about the story. But yeah, let's talk about I Am Dead. So I Am Dead is I'm reading right here from the Wikipedia because I have notes, but for some reason I didn't write down who made the game. That seems really weird. So anyway, I Am Dead is a puzzle adventure game that was developed by a British developer called Hollow Pond. It came out, it was developed on Unreal Engine 4, and it was published by Annapurna Interactive, and it came out on for Windows and the Nintendo Switch on October 8th, 2020. PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and X, S and X on August 9th, 2021. So, I usually try to take a couple of days between games, like when I play a game and then I move on to the next game. One, I've talked about in this podcast before about mental health. Obviously, you don't want to be stressed out while you're trying to play a game and play games about death and destruction and divorce and terrible things back to back to back. I just try to take a couple days. This one, there's just something about it. I haven't really seen any reviews for it. I just remember years back people just mentioning on podcasts and stuff, and I thought I'd give it a shot. And it was included in the PlayStation Plus Extra tier, which I subscribe to. They're raising the prices for that. I don't know if I'm going to keep subscribing. Kind of deciding. Anyway, there was something so, and I don't say this a lot, there was something so sweet and just kind of earnest about this game, I know a lot of times I talk about, the whole thesis of this pod is how are games, or how is death portrayed in games? Does anybody in the design team understand death? Did they have a loved one? Surely they have. A lot of these games, like Gotham Knights, I just blanked on every game I've ever reviewed. Anyway, I have hundreds of episodes, pretty much talking about reviews of games. And you always have to, I don't know why Gotham Knights came in. I think it's because it's a big game with a big team. I don't do a lot of big games. But surely somebody on that team had to come up with or experience death or loss or some kind of grief. And something that just doesn't come through in the writing process. It's you're one of many chefs trying to create a game, as it were. That's way too many metaphors. Anyway, this game, basically what it breaks down is you have passed away. Now, I got notes right here. Hang on. Before I screw this all up, I want to get the person's name right because I had to write it down twice because it is a British development team, and I wrote the name down twice. His name is Maurice Lumpton. He is dead, and he is narrating the game. He lived in a town called, I'm trying to find it here. Where did I write it down here? Oh, good. I didn't write down. He's on an island called Shelmerston. That's what it was, Shelmerston. And he's kind of just your stereotypical towns. There's a volcano in part of the town, which comes into the story. Basically, there is an overarching story. The volcano may blow up and is going to blow up and destroy the town. You have to talk to the spirit of the volcano and find a replacement for them. And so since you're a spirit and a ghost, your dog passed away years ago, Sparky, you guys talk to each other. You try to find other ghosts throughout the town. And then once you get done with a series of mini games, you talk to the ghost and you try to convince them to be the custodian, who's the person who's going to put the mountain to sleep, or more accurately, just make sure the mountain doesn't blow up and kill everybody in town. So that sounds more like a managerial position. I know they're called a custodian, tomato, tomato. In America, the custodian is an important person. Obviously, you need a custodian. Technically, that is a good term because custodians usually have all the keys. Anyway, I'm digressing. What I'm trying to say is that I think that what is the meat of this game and what I think is great about this game is the eulogies it gives to the ghosts throughout the story. Like I took some notes here. There's a lighthouse. There's somebody who lives in a night house named Peter Noach. I'm hoping I didn't write down the pronunciation of that. He is the yoga instructor there, and he started teaching yoga. Well, you find out, he's obviously deceased. He's been deceased for several years. You basically zoom in on people in these little dioramas. They have word bubbles coming up out of their head, and if they have a word bubble, that means they know something about the deceased. You can scan their memory. When you do that, you find a memento like Peter Noach's, whether it be like a statue of Buddha because he was a Buddhist, or I think an old coin. You find these things, and then you summon the ghost. But to me, although that was great, and the gameplay was pretty snappy. I like the dioramas and kind of like moving around, and you slice into things where you can just zoom into the bottom of a shoe and then zoom out, and that was great. But what I thought was really, really heartfelt was the eulogy for each ghost. Like Peter Noach, he taught yoga to several people. One of them was a robot. This is kind of a quasi-realistic thing. But anyway, the robot, is kind of cleaning up the thing, the lighthouse, and Peter and him, the robot, they kind of don't hit it off first because Peter really doesn't like robots. Kind of makes sense. But he finds out the robot kind of finds out that Peter likes plants, and the robot starts raising a plant, and they kind of bond over this plant. Then the robot starts raising more plants. There's another instance where some guy that he met years ago at like a retreat, I think they were in India together learning yoga. Peter threw away a medal that he received in the war. I didn't write down the medal, but they had a picture of it. Well, not a picture, a drawing of it in the game. I think it was like a commemorative cross. But this person grabbed, Peter threw it in the ocean or river or something. The person, without him knowing, went and grabbed it and retrieved it. Years later, they meet. This other guy gives Peter the medal, and Peter said, "Thank you." Basically, I think there's a couple of things in between there that happen. But it's a thing about like all these people saying, "I miss Peter. I love him. I'm glad I got to go through this part of life with him." And all the eulogies, like when you summon the ghost after all these eulogies, they give a little, you say, "Oh, you're talking with Sparky, as Morris." And you say, "Listen, Peter, I hate to bring this up. We need a custodian for the mountain. It's going to blow up." And all of them have like unique things to say about why they don't want to do or do not want to be the custodian. Obviously, they don't want to be the custodian because you find another person later that I'll get into. But Peter says no, and he says, "It's because I finally found peace in my life, and I'm at peace, and this is okay." And they didn't really talk about heaven in the game, like going to heaven. They talked about going west, which I thought was an interesting concept. It reminded me of Lord of the Rings a little bit. Anyway, that was good. And I remember just watching all of these and just being totally moved. There's also Valerie. My notes ran into each other. This is great when you write stuff by hand and they run into each other. There's Valerie. The job is too big. She was like a painter. Her father was a little bit tough on her, if I remember right. But, he was a little tough on her, but he believed in her. And she was the only story that, like, I guess I don't have to be profound. I mean, she was an artist, so she's like, "No, I don't want to be tied down. Like, this is life. I like being a spirit now." But it was all the things that people said about her. You go into the mind of her father, and her mother died when she was young, and he apologized for like the way he treated her and pushed her into things, but also she treated other people bad, or other people would treat her bad, and her father was very kind of like, "Why don't you try painting?" or "Why don't you deal with this in a way?" That to say, it was pretty progressive, and what I liked about it again was it was so bittersweet, where people are just eulogizing the dead people, the I am dead people, these spirits. It really reminded me of a fictional version of that game I reviewed a while ago called A Part of Me, that was a phone game, and it was developed by psychologists. And basically in that game, A Part of Me, they took actual audio recordings of people that experienced grief. You go into a cave in the game, You open a journal and you hit play and you listen to people talk about grief, loss, death of a loved one or something alive, and those are very sad because it was real people. I got a little bit of a vibe of this. Not that it was like as sad as like real experiences. I hate to say it, some of the voice acting was a little bit flat, and they're talking about very moving things. But I think what it is, we never, a lot in games, I talked about it and I brought this up several times. I played Cyberpunk 2077, it didn't hit for me. But there's a great scene in the beginning where you have to craft a eulogy for someone that's passed away. And you get to do different side missions to grab items that might mean something to the person. And then when you go to, or you find an item, then when you go to the funeral, you have to pick lines of dialogue to eulogize a person. And you listen to other people as they eulogize the dead person. And that's what this reminded me of in a way. I know this came out, I think, before Cyberpunk 2021. Anyway, what I loved about it was it just says, let's just focus on this person and just give them a lovely story. And there is an overarching story, like I said, with the mountain, and the mountain's going to blow up. But every moment one of these ended, I just kind of sat and just stared at the screen. It was just so, it was lovely to just hear these stories about people and hear, what they meant to people in the town. The yoga instructor that taught other people in town and to, be more Zen-like and stuff like that. You have Valerie, the artist. You also have Greg Litherhand. He owns a campsite. He was more of an animal person than a people person, but he wanted to make sure everybody had space to relax and stuff like that. And the fact that he, the woman that moved in, took over after Greg died, or not after he died, took over from him, bought the campground from him, tried to burn all of his manuals because he had manuals for how to do things. Apparently he discovered this, but he never chastised her. He just let her live her life. And he wasn't really a people person, and that's why he didn't really want to be the custodian, if I wrote that down right. There's also, that was the last person. Anyway, very, very few games just take time to spend with the deceased and say, what were they like? And also, what were they like to people around them? Really giving these people a proper eulogy. Again, that doesn't happen a lot in games. Games like this, Annapurna is great. They've been knocking it out of the park. I can't believe, I'm sure when Hollow Ponds came to them and said, hey, we're going to do this. There's going to be this cool mechanic, but also we kind of want to sneak in some eulogies. Was Annapurna okay with that? To me, that's crazy. And it should be applauded. It looks here. A lot of people gave it 7, 8 out of 10. I would kind of sit with that. I would give it a little bit more, but obviously I'm very biased and I'm looking at this game from one very particular lens, through one particular lens. And I just got to say, hats off to Hollow Ponds, man. I don't know. I haven't seen you guys do, I haven't seen anything else. If they've done, I don't see anything here on the wiki page about them creating any other games or anything. The next thing they come out with, I'm really looking forward to it. And, again, something like this to eulogize people just doesn't happen in games. Because, yes, there's an overarching story where they have to find a way to have a custodian so the mountain doesn't blow up. For me, I was more blown away with the personal stories that each ghost was told about each deceased person in town, And it was great. And it made me feel good. And, I'm a dog lover. The dog, they got to hang out with the dog again. And it was great. So I cannot recommend it enough. I know I just ruined the game. But if you have PlayStation Plus Extra, or you just want to experience something, I think it was $20 on Steam. There's also several sales on Steam. It's available there. It's also on the Nintendo Switch. I believe it's $20 there as well. US dollars. Also, prices fluctuate if there's a deal or something like that. Check it out. And I think that's it this week, everybody. Have a good week, and I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.